So I get a lot of questions on this channel, mostly related to grass. And just like I told my parole officer, I don't touch this stuff. What are you, a cop? But I do render a lot of it in the valley. And a lot of you want to know how I make it look so good while still having it run at a buttery, smooth 60 fuppets. The short answer is really expensive Unity assets. But not everyone's mommy gives them a hefty allowance for Pokemon cards and waifu PNGs. So I wanted to see if I could get the exact same look and performance with nothing more than a little technical know-how and a whole lot of gumption. We'll also talk a bit about some of the common problems caused by rendering big fields such as this, and compare which method get better results in the end. What's the deal with grass? Get it? It's Frasier. And why is it so hard to get right? I've dressed up this Gremlo as a cow to explain. Now think of this fat, disgusting, good-for-nothing cow as the GPU. Every frame we gotta feed it our grass polygons to chew on before it can spit them out on the screen. A couple of clumps of grass, no problem. But once we start getting into thousands, 100,000s, millions, our cow has bitten off a little more than they can chew. So we're constantly going to be fighting over coverage and optimization. Sure, you could get into writing your own grass rendering system and getting into the weeds, so to speak. But I've got too few IQ points and have eaten too many paint chips for something like that. So here's the expensive way that I've been doing it. Here we go! Ask Daddy for his credit card. Get told no. Mommy says yes to get back at Daddy. Buy the vegetation engine and nature render on the Unity asset store. Take out one of the grass prefabs from the vegetation engine and add your own texture, a little spice. Then edit the material to have the type of movement that you want it to have. Slide some dials around until it looks the way you want it. And turn off the shadow casting so our grass blends into a big grassy mass. Start adding the grass as detail objects to your terrain. Nice and good and plenty. Bed, bath, and beyond. And we add a color element from the vegetation engine so that we can overlay a gradient on the entire field. And finally, we add the nature renderer to our terrain and bask in the peaceful scene. This is pretty much the exact setup I've been using until now, and it looks great and runs smooth. Enough. But let's see if we could get the same results for free. Let's start over by making a new terrain. We'll also make a new blank grass material and take a look at the vegetation engine's grass prefab to see if there's anything that we can steal, learn from it. Now, looking at each clump of grass, we can see that they are pretty simple, just a grass texture laid on top of two intersecting polygons. Wait a minute. Okay, so I guess it's 8 polygons, but 8 still isn't bad, okay? Now what they probably did is they got the extra vertices there to let the grass shader give a little bit of extra wiggle, but I don't really plan on ever zooming up real close to inspect a single clump of grass, so we can just combine that down. With each clump being a quarter of the poly count as our expensive version, we're a little bit ahead of the game. 2 polygons is practically nothing for our... The stupid GPU interprets both sides as a polygon, rendering all the overlapping pixels twice. This is called overdraw, and it's degenerate, and we do not want. And this is where culling comes in. I'm not talking about the action of sending an inferior or surplus animal to be slaughtered. No. At least not yet. We're talking about the process that graphic systems do in order to render less polygons on the screen. In order to bring our poly count from 4 down to 2, we're going to do a specific type of culling called backface culling, which essentially just ignores rendering any polygon that's not facing towards the camera. But Addy, isn't it going to look weird if our grass disappears when we're not facing it? You tell me. Notice anything? Because if you say you do, you're full of shit. Filling the valley with this super optimized grass greatly reduces the serving size to our GPU, but it's still taking its sweet time gorging itself. Eat while you can, fat boy. And we'll have to get back to him in a second, because our grass is looking pretty stiff. The vegetation engine had a built-in shader for this, but we're gonna have to make our own. To simulate wind, we take our clump's world position and use that to sample from some scrolling purling noise that we can multiply against a wind strength value that'll push our vertices in a swaying motion. We also make sure that the shader accounts for how high the vertices are so our grass on the bottom doesn't do a little jig, no matter how dope this stock music is. And already we've got some nice wavy looking grass. To make it look less uniform, I also added a feature to the shader that lets you take the grass's position to pull from a colored texture. And the material on the terrain pretty much does the same thing to help me blend into the grass. I didn't know a better way to do this, so Unity's terrain system classifies our grass as a tree, which I find personally offensive, but hey, I guess all us vegetables look the same to you people. And because of this, Unity has a built-in feature to let us vary the color of the grass, but since we're using a custom material, it's not going to let us do that. So that's why I had to make my own, which I actually like better because it gives us a little bit more control. And with that, I think we did a pretty good job matching the expensive version. Now, with both versions, we have successfully filled the valley with more polygons than should probably be allowed. And on both methods, you can see the fuppus start to drop. But I've found a few key solutions that helped me reduce the digestion time on both versions. I can only imagine how delicious you could be if we truly tried to fatten you up. But with a single panel comic, How to Kill a Gremlo, on the back of my monthly love letter sent to my wonderful Patreon supporters, I don't have to imagine it at all. And look at that salivating sticker right next to the handwritten personal message from yours truly. He's just skin and bones, which is what you'll be when I starve you to death. Because Unity makes it possible. Because Unity makes it easy to help us do a few optimizations that'll reduce the number of polygons we're feeding to the GPU every frame. In our expensive version, the nature renderer already has its own optimization system to occlude any grass outside of the camera's view frustum. But I'm actually surprised to see the frame rate of both of our versions to be so close. So I'm curious to see if our free one will end up being faster after we've applied our optimization techniques to the both of them. The most critical one is by using Unity's built-in occlusion culling baker, which lets us bake information about our level to help the game separate the terrain and other objects into chunks that we could turn on and off when the camera isn't looking at it or if something is in the way. This alone drastically decreases the number of polygons rendering at a time. And our GPU is looking in good shape, but we can go further. I've got a bit of LOD culling, level of detail, where far enough from the camera our grass switches from a rich and creamy 2 polygons to an anemic 1. A compiled game will always run faster than it does in the editor. So let's compile it so we can truly see what our frame Z will be. God, that's so stupid. For this test, I set up a camera in the middle of the valley and point it in 4 directions. Up until this point in time, I've actually never really checked my frame rate, so this will be new for the both of us. So the first thing I did is I took some measurements without any grass just to get a baseline. But on average, I'm only getting 31 frames per second. If our frame rate is that low, even without the grass, what that's telling me is that there's some other stuff in the valley that's not super optimized. And maybe we'll look into that a little bit further in another video. For now, we can still use 31 frames per second as a baseline. Now, our expensive version don't look too good. The highest I got was 31 frames per second, with an average of 26. I even saw frames as low as 21. I don't even want to know how bad it would have been if I didn't do any of the optimization stuff from before. But what about the free version? Well, boys, we're clocking in around a cool 29 frames per second. Still not enough to keep our GPU slim and trim, but hey, I'll get you next time. By looks alone, I think we did a pretty good job. Now, although we didn't hit that 60 mark we wanted to, I'm pretty happy with how the free version turned out, but I definitely wouldn't be embarrassed bringing a nice honey back to either one of these. Please go out with me. In my case, I'm probably going to stick with the expensive version because I'm already in too deep. Now, I've included the assets I made for free on my Patreon if you want to just yank them from there. And the assets that I've talked about in this video in the link below. All right, love you. Bye.